What is the next step? Like, when did you decide, like, okay, I'm putting in my notice? What were the first things you started working on?
Yeah. So I think, I circled back to all of those people that I called initially and really I mocked up some prototypes, very rough things to say, hey, so that thing we talked about a couple months ago, is this what you were thinking? Would you pay for this? How much would you pay for this too? Cause that was important. Like if it was like not a lot, then like maybe that was not the exact problem that we needed to be solving. And so my first step was just like coming back to all those people and trying to test the theory a little bit further and go a little bit deeper than just like initial conversations.
How did those conversations go for you? Obviously, since you kept going, a lot of people probably said all the things you wanted to hear.
Yeah.
But did you hear anything in that feedback that like surprised you and that kind of informed the solution that you were kind of thinking of?
Yeah. So I think that pricing like conversation, asking like how much you'd be willing to pay for this. And when I was hearing, low dollar amounts, I kind of had to parse through those signals of like, does that really mean that this is not a big problem to solve? Or does that mean this is something they are willing to invest a small amount because solves a small problem and we could potentially grow from there? And so trying to learn how to navigate the feedback. Also, as I mentioned, a lot of these people were like friends and colleagues. And so had to parse through a lot of that feedback where people, I think, didn't want to break some hard news to me.
Yeah.
And so like understanding that like willingness to pay and clearly like defining who would be a potential customer versus who would not be interested in it.
I think it's always great to get feedback from anyone, but yeah, you do have to keep those relationships in mind. And as much as you can to kind of step out of that circle to say, okay, people who don't know me, what are they saying? Okay. Are they saying something different from the people who do know me? Because I think that can also be an indicator of, people, yeah, like you said, not wanting to break your heart and the idea you might have. So then what was the next step? So you got all this feedback. People are like, yes, I'll pay maybe a small amount. And you're like, okay, how can I give them something? They're like, I will pay anything you want for this solution. What took you to there?
There was so many twists and turns. I think my one of my probably biggest challenges was I non-technical. I didn't have a software background. I did not have like an engineering background. So trying to figure out what's this correct support model for building the company, and went through a lot of different failed learnings, I'll say, to get there. And so I think that was important for my journey because, it built my confidence. It helped me with all those, failed outcomes. I learned a ton about how to actually, like what actually goes into coding and building software and all of the infrastructure around it, which I think in the end makes me a better founder, CEO of a technology company. So I will say like everything has its silver lining.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's great that you're calling out like, yeah, I'm not a technical founder, but you also did not let that stop you from, going in and saying, well, let me go figure out what I can, right? And what would you say was like your biggest takeaway from some of those initial experiences that maybe other founders can take away as a lesson from your efforts?
I think, when I first started, I was like, I have no idea what it takes to build software. And I feel like you know more than you think. Like if you're tech savvy enough, you can understand product and user experience and like how to interact with a platform, which is a really big part of building a product. There is obviously the back end coding that is important as well, but there is a lot of front end like UX UI work that is important. And I think I didn't think I was strong enough in that area when I actually was. And I feel like that was probably my biggest takeaway was like I had this like big fear and like thought this was like kind of a black hole and I would never be able to master it. But then when I was kind of forced to in some of those situations, I was like, oh, okay, I can kind of figure this out. And I'm by no means an expert, but like at least I am enough to be dangerous. And I've had some incredible advisors along the way who've like really, really dumbed things down for me to help me understand. And also ChatGPT is awesome as well.